You might remember that time as a child when you wanted to have that cool hat just because your friend had it. And in reply, your parents asked you, "If your friends jumped off a cliff, will you jump too?" And the first thought in your mind would be, "Hell no, that's insane." But what if you actually were part of a crowd that was jumping off a cliff? And I would say that you were going to jump too. Now you might have begun questioning my sanity, but that is what's exactly going to happen. And this is a proven psychological phenomena known as herd mentality, or mob mentality. Herd mentality is a condition that describes the imitative, moralless, and sometimes even hostile behavior demonstrated by people in large crowds. When otherwise rational and peace-loving individuals come together to form a crowd, they lose their individual thinking and reasoning ability and form part of a crowd guided by a collective mentality, which might be foolish and even harmful. So what makes a seemingly intelligent and harmless individual do horrendous things when they become part of a mob? Let's find out. French polymath Gustav Le Bon was an expert in many different subjects, from medicine to psychology to physics. He's best known for his book The Crowd, a study of the popular mind which explained crowd psychology and why people behave differently in groups. Crowd is a group of people united by a common ideology, belief, or idea. However, the characteristics of the crowd are far different from the characteristics of the individuals within it. Le Bon said that when in a crowd, the individual becomes less civilized. While a person may be cultured outside of a crowd, when part of it they act like a barbarian, behaving on instinct. These crowd characteristics are produced by three causes. By being aware of these causes, techniques can be used to intentionally manipulate crowds to behave in a particular way. This has been used in the fields of business and politics in the past, with many questioning whether it is ethical to do so. During the recent BLM protest, I watched on television as thousands of people gathered on streets all across the USA for something constructive. But it did not take much before things turned bitter. Video evidence showed that huge groups of people rioted in towns and cities, demolishing statues, subjecting public buildings to arson, and looting stores. Many shops and businesses were destroyed as a result of arson and looting. People behaved like this in a crowd, but why do they not behave like that when they're on their own? For some, it'd be a question of morality. For others, it would simply be due to the fear of being arrested and jailed. Le Bon argues that when in a crowd, the anonymity that the crowd provides the individual, due to the large numbers, means that they lose their fear of the consequences, as well as their moral responsibility. This temporary feeling of invincibility causes them to be unable to restrain certain instincts that they otherwise would. In February 2013, a man in China started selling cans of fresh air for 80 cents, due to the bad population in the country at the time. Despite admitting the canned air was a lighthearted stunt, in 10 days he managed to sell 10 million cans. Another example can be seen in the 1600s Netherlands. At that time, tulips were seen as a symbol of status in the Netherlands. The value of tulips rose so high that people were spending their life savings on tulip bulbs, simply because everyone was trying them. This resulted in a large amount of money lost when the prices eventually crashed. Both these stories are examples of fads as a result of contagion. In a crowd, Le Bon believed every act is contagious, to a point where an individual will sacrifice his personal interests for the interest of the crowd. Fresh air in a can was a nonsensical fact, and buying a can of fresh air was a nonsensical act that an individual would not do on their own. However, when part of a crowd, even irrational acts become contagious. The word demagogue was born in ancient Greece. It comes from the words demos, meaning the people, and agogos, meaning leader. In the 20th century, there are many examples of demagogues who had a powerful influence over crowds due to high levels of suggestibility. They have transformed a nation of individuals, most of which had no intention of ever murdering a fellow human being, to act ruthlessly and inhumanely by punishing for brutality. The mob mentality that arose turned the crowd into a bigoted, vicious, and genocidal horde. Le Bon claimed that after being part of a crowd for a period of time, the individual enters a state, similar to being hypnotized, where they are mesmerized by the leader of the crowd. The power and influence that leaders of these crowds have can lead to terrible atrocities. The leader can influence the crowd to think and feel a certain way. The crowd then often turns those thoughts into acts. Crowd mentality not only affects the average Joe, but also destroys the rational judgment and morality of otherwise high-class sophisticated individuals. This incident happened in a lawn tennis game between Belarusian player Sabalenka and Australian Ashley Barty. Sabalenka was grunting quite loudly with every hit, and the crowd started mocking her. They started grunting with her. An otherwise silent tennis court was resonating with high-pitched grunts from the crowd. It went on to such an extent that the match referee had to ask the crowd to maintain silence. Nevertheless, the crowd thought it was funny and continued to do it. Another example of people negatively influenced by crowd mentality can be seen on social media. Social media has become the hub of trolls who mock people in huge groups, posting and commenting mean and obscene things which they never would speak if confronted face to face. It can be seen that an otherwise civilized individual who would never think of mocking someone started doing it because they became a part of a crowd. Nobody could put a finger on them and pinpoint their actions, so they gave in to the crowd mentality. Conclusion: crowd mentality has evolved as a psychological phenomenon, which has helped humans evolve to the top of the food chain. But when individuals become anonymous because of the vast numbers in crowds, they become reckless and let their true inner side take over. So what can common people like you and me do to stop becoming a mob? The only way to avoid being mobilized by a crowd is to think thoroughly and question all your decisions before taking any actions. Think what the result of your actions will be. Is that action what you would do if you were an individual? And if any of your answers become something that doesn't seem like you, stop right there and then. That's the only way to stop being part of a crowd guided by a destructive mentality.